So, question one. Explain to our audience your background in law enforcement.
I was a deputy sheriff with the Jefferson Parish Sheriff's Department. Basically, there were probably about 400 or 500 deputy sheriffs in Jefferson Parish. You don't really get hired to be a jailer or a fingerprint artist or anything else. You basically get hired by the Sheriff's Department, and you're trained in different things. So most of what I was trained in was administrative, which was, like taking fingerprints, booking people, that kind of thing, patting people down. And I worked at prison because there's not really a jail per se in New Orleans, less a security prison building, let's put it that way. There are several buildings that make up the incarceration complex of the New Orleans area. Okay. I worked in the one that was central processing.
All right, so you worked in booking.
Yeah, basically, that's mainly what I did, which entails a lot of things: taking pictures, fingerprinting, taking people to the night court, patting people down, running records.
Have you ever had to give a deposition at a trial?
Yes, I have.
And you've seen the stenographers do their stuff, right?
Oh, yes.
That's the field that I'm going into.
Okay. Oh, you're going into that field?
Yeah, the same role that Kathy Bates played in the movie, and I sure as hell hope that I don't get a Dustin Hoffman who sounds like he has a stroke. Big boy did it. Big boy did it.
Big boy did
it. Yeah. All right. So, question two. What inspired you to start that fan project that would later become the successor to Dick Loker?
This is going to be a complicated answer.
Okay.
My mother, when she was a teenager, she met and married a fellow and had 2 kids with him and had split up with him and moved from Ripley, Mississippi to Memphis, Tennessee in the 1950s. Mm-hmm. That's where she met my father, who was a manager at Wonder Bread, at the Wonder Bread Bakery in Memphis, Tennessee. Mm-hmm. They dated, and they married, and he was offered the job of being the manager at a Wonder Bread depot in Jackson, Tennessee, which is about an hour's drive from Memphis. Basically, what would happen would be that the bread would get baked in Memphis, loaded on a truck, and taken to different cities where there would be smaller Wonder Bread trucks that would deliver bread to your local grocery store. When we moved there, my dad was the manager of the depot. My mother worked in the thrift store, which sold day-old bread. My brother was in school. I wasn't old enough for school yet. Okay. However, I was a very quiet kid, and if you gave me a comic book, I would be quiet for a long, long time. And this was back when Harvey Comics was reprinting Full Adventures of Dick Tracy in 25-cent, 80-page giant comic books.
The same as Dell.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So basically, it would be pretty easy. Get the kid a comic book, he'll be in it all day. And that's what it was, And Dick Tracy was popular at the time. It was easy to find. And I had seen Dick Tracy some from the comics page in the newspaper. So this got me interested in Dick Tracy when I was about 6. And unfortunately, it wasn't very long after that they Harvey discontinued the Dick Tracy comic book. One story that goes along with this was 1 month my mother bought me the one that reprinted Measles, the Teenage Dope Fiend.
Measles Enog, the son of Anna Enog, who tried to kill Gravel Gertie in 1945.
Indeed. And in the course of the story, Tracy is pursuing Measles, and somehow or another, his coat gets caught and he gets dragged behind Measles' car. Okay. Anyway, he escapes with his life. Next month, Harvey reprinted the Wormy story.
Wormy Marins?
Dick Tracy got married to Tess.
Oh, okay.
And Tracy and Tess went off on their honeymoon, got snowbound, and stayed at this farmer's house all night. The next morning, the roads had been plowed, and Tracy has found out that he and Wormy have switched suitcases. They have each other's suitcase.
Mm-hmm.
And he's found blood stains on whatever's in Wormy's suitcase. So he's trying to delay it, to delay Wormy getting away. Wormy leaves with his suitcase. Somehow Tracy gets his raincoat caught in the rear of the car and starts getting dragged to death behind Wormy's car.
I'd like to point out for a second to the audience that what I'm holding in front of them is a copy of the 50th anniversary of Dick Tracy. And right here where I'm pointing is Wormy Marins, the character that you're talking about, and next to him is Measles Enog.
So I didn't know they were reprinting these stories out of order. Around that time, we started taking the daily paper in Jackson, Tennessee, and my mother asked me how I liked reading Dick Tracy in the newspaper. And I told her, I said, I like to find the ones who's going to get dragged to death behind the car. I thought that was the formula. You know, Dick Tracy finds the crook, tries to catch him, and gets dragged behind the car. Anyway, I was always interested in Dick Tracy. For years after that, it has always been my ambition in life to work in comics. So I hope that I could work on Dick Tracy someday. But Jackson, Tennessee is a small area. And back in the 1970s, you couldn't go to your local bookstore and read a book on how to break into comics. So I basically did a Dick Tracy Sunday page, wrote it, drew it, colored it, inked it, the whole 9 yards. But once I was done with it, I didn't know what else to do with it, so I just set it aside. Years later, when I started breaking into comics, I was learning what you had to do to actually try. And I tried teaming with different artists I had worked with in my comic field to do Dick Tracy, but I never got so much as a pencil strip until Joe. Now, Joe and his wife Hillary, this is 15 years ago, visited us in Arkansas, and we wanted to take them out to the farm that we live at. And when Joe was here, I asked Joe, since he had done so many characters for so many companies, what is the one character that he would always have liked to have done but never had a chance to? And he said Dick Tracy with Max Allen Collins writing it. And he explained that when he was a kid, one of the earliest memories people have of him is him trying to trace Dick Tracy out of the Sunday paper. And both of us wanted to go into comics someday. As it turned out, the Dick Tracy strip, Dick Loker was thinking about retiring, which we did not know. Joe and I did not know. I said, look, Joe, I got an idea. I'll get my webmistress for my comic book line to do a Dick Tracy tribute website. And we can ask our friends who are Dick Tracy fans and to write articles, show pictures of the collection, stuff like that. And I said, and you and I can do a short Dick Tracy story in comic strip format and put it on there. They were talking about a replacement for Dick Loker, and this gentleman said, well, how about these two guys that are doing this tribute website? So they put up a new strip every 2 or 3 days. They can draw, they can do Dick Tracy, they can write him and draw him, and they offered us the job. So that was a long answer to a short question.
I'm used to those. So that brings me to my next question. Out of all the villains in Grogue's Gallery, what made you decide to use Flyface and Willie the Fifth first?
Basically, I had just recently read a reprint of their story where they died in Hawaii with the hurricane.
Mm-hmm.
So they were on my mind. Plus, they were good villains. You know, they stood out.
Was that the reason why you brought Little Doc back?
Yeah, Yes.
I don't usually feel hungry after I've seen a strip where Flyface is on there, or Little Doc, or the grandmother.
Indeed. I can understand that. I have read that they got letters of complaint when Flyface and Little Doc showed up different times.
I can sort of see that.
I can see that too.
So here's the big question right here.
Sure.
One of my all-time favorite villains that you guys created, whose life I decided to save in my mythos stories, Stilletta Jones. She's one of my all-time favorites. How did you come up with the concept of Flat Top Jones marrying an African-American?
Well, I had read in several articles on Dick Tracy, Professor Gould had intended for Flat Top to be a person of color. But at the time, 1944, apparently they couldn't. So I decided, okay, well, let's have his wife be a person of color and have her bear some resemblance. Truth be told, she's probably related to Flat Top, like third cousin or something.
I use that same kind of concept in my mythos stories. Ariella Jones, who is the great niece of Flat Top Jones by blood, my counterpart in the story, she and I are third cousins, twice removed, and we're both engaged.
Yes, I understand.
Mm-hmm.
But that's where Stilletta Jones came from. And, of course, she would be out for revenge since so many of Tracy's villains are. And, of course, Tracy was responsible for her husband's death.
I'm glad that you brought Stilletta into the picture. And she is definitely one of my favorites.
Well, she was fun to work with, and having her as a circus performer seemed to go along with it.
I'm a huge fan of Peter Pan as much as I am Dick Tracy. And Charlie Korsmo and Dustin Hoffman already set the precedent for there being a link between the two.
Yes, that's true. That's almost like when they filmed Jesus Christ Superstar in Tunisia. When that cast and crew were leaving, another film was taking their place on location. And two of those actors had just finished making a Frankenstein movie. That was David Prowse and Peter Cushing.
Cool.
And this new movie that they were going to make was called Star Wars.
Aha.
Yes.
You know, I actually interviewed a voice actor who actually had an uncredited role in Star Wars.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Michael Bell.
Our son is big into Star Wars.
Yeah, so he played...
You're safe. When we heard about Alderaan, we feared the worst.
And Commander Willard. How would you explain away the warped timeline that Mike Killian created for Mumbles and Bonnie Braids?
I don't try. Because when we got the job, I had not read the Mike Killian years. Since then, a Dick Tracy fan has donated his bound editions, and I've read those years, but quite frankly, it doesn't make sense to me that the characters can bounce back and forth like that. Just like with Mumbles being much older, and his nephews like Huey, Dewey, and Louie. So basically, Joe and I primarily stick to what if Chester Gould or Max Allen Collins said it, it's canon.
So would Mumbles, Children, Wild Breath, and Kiss Me Quick not be considered canon?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we basically just ignore them. Just like we are ignoring Sharp Top because we think it makes Tracy a little elderly to be taking on the grandson of one of his villains. We have mentioned him, but we'll probably never show him.
Wait, you mean High Top?
High Top, I'm sorry. Yes, I said Sharp Top, sorry. Yeah, we'll probably never show High Top.
So is it cool if I use him? I made him to be a good guy in my mythos.
No problem with me.
And Sharp Top, because he's a spirit in Neverland now.
Yeah.
Awesome. Have you ever had a situation in writing Dick Tracy where you were put into a situation where you could not think of a way out like Gould did? For example, Jock Eisenlander throwing Tracy into the chasm in 1941 and dropping that rock.
Yeah, we've had that. When we upgraded the two-way wrist radio, a lot of people suggested that it be hardwired in to a person's nervous system, but we thought that would be too easy to trace Tracy if he was kidnapped or Sam or some of the others. So we purposely did not put it in there. We thought it would be too hard to work around.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
How do you decide to bring classic rogues back? For example, BBI's Measles Enog, Not a Fella, or Mr. Bribery, Maddie Squared, who is not the original, but is a computer. BDI's.
It depends on the circumstances of their passing. In the case of Mumbles, for instance, when Mumbles came back, I had no idea how Mumbles had exited, so I just showed him as showing up one day. Since then, of course, I found out. But they never showed Mr. Bribery's body falling from the helicopter, for instance. And
then you decide to make his death be Joey Packett.
Yes, so it depends on the circumstance. Like, for instance, Shaky was shown as a skeleton the last time he was shown in the strip. So there's no bringing him back at all.
Which is why you decided to create Neo Shaky.
Yeah, a nephew, yes.
Which was the perfect way to bring Quiver Tremblay back.
Yes.
That was a good call, and I like how you and Joe made it so that she looked more like during the Rick Fletcher era than when Dick Loker brought her back during the Xylon storyline.
Yes, Joe is very good at, but he can do someone else's style very well.
Imitate?
Yes, there we go.
I have to agree.
When it's necessary. Although it just about drove him up the wall during the Little Orphan Annie storyline.
He's definitely good at that. What about like minor characters? Because in one strip you brought back BB-Eyes' obscure brother BD-Eyes, who worked with Itchy's brother Twitchy.
Yes. I had read the story that Collins wrote, and Fletcher started and Loker finished. Well, it makes sense. I mean, if they were going to make a movie of your life story, and they had everybody you know in it, that would be about 40 actors, at least. So actually having relatives and brothers that resemble and act like the prime brother or sister is not that far a stretch.
What was your inspiration for the Midnight Mirror storyline? Because my first guess is Star Trek.
To recast, well, basically, one time in an interview, I told the interviewee that Chester Gould gave us a great cast of characters, and it would be fun to see them acting in a different role. I mean, this has been done on TV and in other things. On the Adventures of Superman TV show with George Reeves, the actor Robert Shane played a French inspector one time in one episode. And everyone thinks this guy looks like Inspector Henderson, and it's the same actor, but there's no relation, you know. It's just fun for the cast, but I thought it would be fun to do a polar reversal on the characters and have Flat Top as the hero.
The Chalice.
Yeah.
What about how you gave the Brow a name? Where'd you come up with Alfred Brow?
Just a German name. I thought it would go well. I figured he got that as a nickname. You know, they called him Brow, and after a while, people would think that was was his actual name. That's the one thing that I wish Chester Gould had done a little more of, is give actual names to some of his villains. Like we gave Floyd to Flat Top, since he had based Flat Top off Pretty Boy Floyd to a degree.
Yep. So sort of like Skardol and Chrome and, well, I can't say Yogi Yama because that's an actual name.
Yeah. That Skardol was a weird looking villain.
Yeah. The way his scleras looked. Ugh.
Yeah.
How did you get George Takei and Sarah Karloff to guest star in the comic?
We'll do Sarah first.
Okay.
Now, you may or may not know it, but my wife Carol and I have been active in comic books for well over 20 years. I started out, my first work was for Harvey Comics, writing Risky Rich and Casper the Friendly Ghost. This led to later on them asking me to do New Kids on the Block and some treatment for animated Casper specials, which I did some of, which were never produced. Around 1990, I came up with an idea for a comic book series called Shanda the Panda, and Carol and I had discovered anthropomorphics, or furry fandom. And, you know, we were getting acquainted with it. But since most anthropomorphic books are mature readers, there would be mature themes in it. We visited the offices of Antarctic Press. Shanda would be a panda. Editor Sean Howell, who ran a movie theater, Carol about a novel she was writing. And he said, could you turn that into a comic book? Which she did. Basically, she would tell me the story and I would do breakdowns or scans to translate it into comic terms. So she did an adventure story called Catmandu, whereas I did a romance and relationship series called Shanda the Panda. So we had different fans and such. At one time, we were publishing about 10 different titles a month. So we were very busy, and someone had mentioned in a phone call, I was talking to a friend of mine that was in the comic, the old Boris Karloff Tales of Mystery book that Gold Key had come out with. I said, you know, you could reprint those. I have a new Boris Karloff cover just as well, like do 2 new stories and 2 reprints. So we got in touch with Sarah Karloff, and she and Bela Jr. and Ron Chaney owned the character likenesses of their famous fathers. Well, we enjoyed talking to Sarah, and we told her that we would have to, she wanted to get the books reprinted, but we told her we'd have to have some new material because they wouldn't sell as well otherwise. We told her a couple of stories we'd come up with, and she said, don't tell me anymore, it'll give me bad dreams. But Sarah Karloff is a wonderful person. She's a wonderful woman, and she's a great guardian of her father's legacy. And she's always willing to get out there and meet the people, which is very nice. That's where we know Sarah from. George Takei, I had been watching a pilot show on the History Channel called Lucky Muckers. That was about people that used metal detectors and such, you know, on beaches and such to find jewelry and watch and stuff like that. And I thought, I wonder what they would find if there was one of these reclamation camps that was under where a lake is now. So came up with that idea, and then I thought Tracy had met someone like George Takei in I think it was a Loker Chilean storyline. I remember seeing it when I was younger, but if there's a way we could get in touch with George Takei, maybe we could get him to guest star in the story. Not remember reading it, so I didn't know who the star was. So we thought it would be nice to have George Takei in there. So I thought, and give some publicity. At the time, we didn't know he was working on musical on the subject. Apparently, he had stars like us, but we knew he was writing about the reclamation camp. So George liked the idea very much. And you've got a reprint, so you know the involvement he had in the storyline.
Yep.
Yeah, he was our source, basically.
And it wasn't until the reprint that you replaced Tawara with Takei.
Yes. Well, the thing is, the first time we had done a live person in there was a question about whether or not we could use his real name.
Mm-hmm.
The first live person we did in there was Jerry Lawler and the wrestler. And, of course, there have been Jerry Lawler toys and action figures and such. So we thought, well, we better change it just in case there's a problem with WWE. So we changed it to Jerry King. So we thought we still had to do the same thing. We have found out since we don't have to.
So, Jerry King, that was during the Mole storyline.
Yes, Mole and Byron Flint Hart and Thunder Child was the villain.
Mm-hmm.
And Jerry Lawler was thrilled to be in Dick Tracy. He enjoyed it quite a bit.
He's a nice guy, too.
He's a very nice fellow.
I can imagine.
He is. Plus, he's a big comic book fan. Yeah, he's a very good artist. It was his ambition when he was growing up to work for Marvel someday, but he got into wrestling instead.
Not too hard to imagine, because Captain Lou Albano, he was a wrestler, but he was the second person to voice Mario.
Yes. I mean, there's a lot of connections between all these characters. That was one thing we enjoyed about doing the storyline with Sarah Karloff, was putting in all the other Karloff references of Frankenstein, the Grinch, and Arsenic and Old Lace.
Not to mention an actual character that Karloff himself portrayed.
Yes, indeed.
Not now, Tor. The marshmallows come later.
It was funny when Sarah said they looked nothing like her father. Kind of ironic.
Yes, it kind of was.